Good morning. And we are officially starting. So today's practice, we're going to start lying down like this. You're going to have your chair. I'm going to get really close to the chair like this. I kind of go on a diagonal line so I can swing my legs up. Then scoot my hips forward and come back down. I've also got a pillow here, a blanket. It can be a pillow though, that is going to give me some support just for the tops of the shoulders and around the neck and my head, and I've curled the edges in here. If you've been in class with me, you know this is one of my favorites to support the head. You know, in terms of the nervous system, this is where if you only had a prop to support your head, I would say support your head, because that's where all the nerve endings are for all the muscles that hold your head up. And we really want to make sure that the nervous system thinks it's okay, knows that it's okay to let go. And so then arms can go to the sides. You can roll your shoulders under. Any other support you need. I know, Richard, you've got your new blocks now. You can use those. And legs up on the chair, as calves as level as possible. So, you know, you might need to lift your hips up or elevate the chair, put more blankets on top of the chair. So I'll give you a couple of moments to figure out what you need and settle in and move your hips around and get a sense that the back of your body is supported by the earth, and you have a sense that you are balanced in the back of your pelvis. So this is pretty key. Let the pelvis to feel balanced so that the rest of the spine can take on its natural curves. So one way to check to see if your pelvis is balanced is to take the heels of your hands, this part right here, and rest them on the front hip points, the ASIS. And then point your middle fingers down towards your pubic symphysis, the pubic bone is often referred to. And we want that to get a sense that that is level. Those points are parallel to the floor and level with each other. And then adjust so that that's happening. And then you may need to, once you've got that happening, you may need to adjust your back ribs and your shoulders. So we kind of want that to be the starting point. And then we lay. Because it might not feel normal. We're looking for an alignment that's going to serve the greater good. So it might not feel normal. And that's okay. Nothing these days feels normal. So as you lay here, I'm going to come up out of the pose just to talk a little bit. Feel free to close your eyes. That's always an option. If you want to keep them open, that's okay too. Either way, just whatever your comfort level is. So I want to move us in the direction of forward bends. Thank you, Chris O'Neill. Not sure if we'll get to Janushirshasana, but hey, I'll give it a try. It's only an hour, so that's my biggest challenge, other than the technology, is timing. I started to think about when Chris and I had this conversation about forward bends and how wonderful they can be. I got thinking about, well, what does it mean to do a forward bend? And I thought of a bowing action. So it's kind of like when you bow to somebody or bow to something, you're bowing in reverence. And so I'd like to have that be a bit of the intention for today's practice, that we are moving towards forward bends that represent this idea that we are honoring something. And it can be anything you want, something that you have deep respect and awe for. It's a gesture that is offered throughout the world to bow, palms together sometimes. And if you just consider for a moment anything that is going on in your life that you are grateful for, and think of that thing as you move through the practice today. That is what you're bowing for. You know, I kind of also, from the Anusara world, when I was doing Anusara yoga, the front of the body was a representation of your individual self, your individual uniqueness, and your expression in the world, because this is how we move. We can see the front of the body, but the back of the body represents from their perspective, the universal part of you, the part that can't be seen. You could never see your own back body. And it is always there, lifting and guiding you, moving you forward, like this, hands from behind. So with a forward bend, we are honoring, we are looking to see what we respect with great awe, and we're saying, how can we maintain who I am as I do that? So that's kind of symbolically what we practice with forward bends. There's more, but that's what I just was thinking about for today. So take a few more moments here, tuning into your breath, letting your chest rise and fall, maybe your belly rise and fall. Whatever parts of you are moving because you're breathing, just tune into that. I always forget to say too, but for future reference, since you're on mute, feel free to put music in the background. It just does not work for me to play music here, and for you to hear it. It just doesn't work unless it was going through my system. So if you like to have music in the background, feel free to do that. As long as you turn it off if you unmute to ask a question. So also, as you're lying here, not just feeling the breath, but just feeling overall how your body feels. We've got the hips and legs in a flexed position. Your hips are flexed. Your knees are flexed. When the knees are bent like this, they're called flexed. But the spine is neutral. So it's important to be able to differentiate hip flexion, which is what you're doing right now, with lower back flexion or flexion in the spine, any flexion in the spine. So a rounding of the whole back, like what we would do in child's pose, is flexion of the spine. That's where we try to create as evenness and as even a feeling of rounding through the back of the body as possible. So when we go into forward bends, we will flex at the hips. That's the first step in any forward bend. So you're basically in a forward bend right now. I'd also like you to notice that the whole front of the body is long. So if you trace your awareness from where your pubic bones are, through your belly button, the center of the body, to the bottom part of your sternum, and all the way up to the top of the sternum, to where you find your collarbones, there's a length. So just become aware of the space that you have. I'll go back from your pubic bones to your belly button. With the pelvis level like this, just notice the space that you have here. And then come back to your belly button and notice the space between your belly button and the bottom of your breastbone. And then from the bottom of the breastbone to the top of the breastbone, notice the space there. Notice how it might change when you breathe. But for the most part, it's a pretty set alignment. Then from the top of the sternum, the top of the breastbone, you can even use your fingers to find your collarbones, or just find it in your awareness, and notice the space from the center out to your shoulders along the collarbones. And when we move into forward bends, we'd like to, as much as possible, have an awareness of this space in the front of the body as we start to move the back of the body into more flexion. So the first phase, said again, is hip flexion, which is what you're doing right now. And then we move into where we're starting to lengthen the whole spine. And we'll move in and out of poses that will teach us those things. Take one more long, slow, smooth breath here, and exhale with a sigh. Then slowly start to bring your feet down off the chair. Nice way to start. You can always finish the class this way too. So feet come down, then roll over to one of your sides. Use your hands to help support you, to lift you up. You can move the chair off to the end You might need it for support in a forward bend, but if you have blocks, great. You can put those near the end of the mat. I also showed some of you before, if you have stools, a stool or stools, this can also be used as a support, say in a lunge, it can be used like a block. So this is a time to get creative. So what do I have around my house? What can I use for props? Okay, so now come to your hands and knees. Set your hands up so that you have support through the bony parts. I'm going to say the fingerprints aren't so bony, but I'd like you to press your fingerprints into the floor through the first set of knuckles all the way across here, through your thumb pad and out to your thumb print, so that you can create a bit of an action like suction cups on your hands. Find again, while we're here, your toes can be tucked or pointed straight back. You can have a blanket under your knees. Find, just by moving around a little bit, where neutral might be. So the same alignment you had when you were lying on your back, can you find it here? You know, there's movement of the pelvis, there's movement of the shoulders, there's forward, there's back. Where can you feel that you have that same kind of awareness of your body in relationship to the rest of your body? And then once you've established it, that's your starting point. Start to drop your tailbone. So your tailbone is down here, and I'd like you to just start to move so that your tailbone moves towards the floor without moving your upper back. Tailbone drops down. You might start to feel, right about now, I start to feel a little bit more tone in my low belly, just above my pubic bone. And that's about as far as I can go without affecting the rest of the back. I'm going to stay here for a moment, just tuning into that energy, feeling how I've got that engagement through my belly. And then we'll do the opposite. Start lifting your tailbone up, which will bring your pelvis back to neutral. And then we'll go down again. So dropping your tailbone down. So really, right now, it's a movement more focused around the pelvis. Can you do this without moving your upper back, your middle back, or your low back? And the low back's going to move a little bit, because as you lift your tailbone up, the low back will shorten. And as you drop your tailbone down, the low back will lengthen. But I'm not looking for excessive movement like this, dropping your low back into your body. I want you to explore range of motion that just starts to wake up this part of the body. Because as I said, forward bend, the first part of a forward bend is your ability to move into hip flexion. And this is part of it. Okay, take two more like that. One forward, one back, one forward, one back. Then we're going to add on. So tailbone starts to drop down, then push forward with your hands and shift back until you start to feel a lengthening, a little bit more of an opening through the space between the top of your pelvis and your rib cage. So it's not the upper back yet. It's just in that, and pause there. Then come forward, tailbone lifts up, back to neutral. And just do that part again. Tailbone drops down, you start to shift back, you open up the space between the top of the pelvis and your rib cage. So do it a few times so that you can tune in. Am I moving my upper back? Can I tell? When you move your upper back, you'll have more of a shortening through the chest and a narrowing of the chest. So can you do this? Maybe it's a less movement. I think sometimes it's a misunderstanding in our yoga practices that the movement has to be big. When often small and subtle is more effective. Not to say that it's not going to have an effect to the chest and the upper back. It will, because the fascia is all connected. But we're just focusing, trying to bring awareness to different parts of the body. Okay, so last one. Come back to the center. And here we go again. This time, tailbone drops down, shift back. try to get to where you can start to open up through the middle of the back and widen the rib cage. So the upper back will be affected, but it can't just be all upper back. Noticing if you're shrugging your shoulders. We're going to stay away from that action of shrugging the shoulders. Once you get as far as you can go without shrugging your shoulders, bring your head down and find an arc that your head works with the rest of the spine. And then we'll go the other way again. So tailbone lifts up, move through, come forward, back to neutral, and bring your head in line with your spine. Let's do that a few more times. So the action starts with the tailbone dropping, opens up and lengthens through the low back, then widens through the mid-back and rib cage. Then the head comes down in an even arc with the body. Then you start at the tailbone, lift your tailbone up again, come forward. So we're doing a little bit more what's called articulation through the spine. You can allow this action to be as fluid as you're able to do while still maintaining an awareness of the different parts. You know, we put so much emphasis on hamstrings. That is a big part of forward bends. They kind of can restrict us from going where we need to go. But for me, a lot of it is we're not aware of how the body moves. We're not really totally aware of this individual, of the actions of our individuality. And we kind of move a lot of the times without this awareness of the back body, the universal part. And so can we meld the two together? Can we have a sense of what's going on in the front and the back? As we start to bow inward with a sense of reverence for all we have received, all we continue to receive, without focusing on what we don't have. Okay, last one, and let's head back and go right into child's pose. So we can go into child's pose from this curled position. Let's try that first. So I'm curled down like this, or the front of the body is curling, and then you walk back. So you can have something under your ankles. You can have a blanket underneath your knees if you need a little space for your knees, if there's an issue, pain. And just notice, take hold of the sides of your mat right near your knees and pull your mat forward. This gives me a little bit more of a feeling of lengthening through my low back. It feels really nice. If it doesn't feel nice, adjust it. But I'd like you to notice with this small shape, you're closer, your head's closer to your knees. This is more flexion in the back of the body for sure. And it's also, there's a contracting through the front of the body. So to contrast that, to see what we want to do in our forward bend, lift yourself up again. Walk your hands a little bit further forward. So if they were here, I'm walking them about a handprint forward. I'm also going to take my knees wider and keep my big toes towards each other. Again, push forward with the hands to start shifting back, but instead of dropping your tailbone, stay as neutral as you can through the spine. So your sit bones do the leading. They shift backwards. Now notice as you do this, notice the space between your pubic bone and your belly button and the lower part of your breastbone, and your whole breastbone up to the top, and the collarbones. So you may or may not be able to sit back onto your heels. You may need to let your hands slide back towards you a little bit. Keep your head now in line with your spine. So we create some space and opening through the front of the body by anchoring the hands like this, lengthening and opening up through the sides of the chest, the sides of the waist. And we go into, this is a little bit deeper hip flexion because we've moved the legs out of the way. There's room for the body to be long in the front. We'll explore that in a standing pose too. Lengthen the back of the neck. We'll just take a couple more breaths here. If it's not feeling great, if there's pain in your ankles or your knees or your hips, please don't stay in. That's not what yoga is. One more breath. Then pull yourself up, come forward, and lay on your belly. As you lay on your belly, I'm going to switch to this side so I can get a better view and keep an eye on Dean. He's not sleeping yet, guys. Okay, so now bring your forehead down to the floor. I don't think I can actually do that with my headset. Maybe. Okay, forehead down to the floor. Stretch your legs back so that you feel they're in line with your body and they're long. So I'm going to reach back and then point my toes so I'm resting on the tops of my feet. Then reach your arms back as well. Plant your hands down on either side of your body on the floor. As you reach back through your legs, I'd like you to reach in a specific way so that your legs feel like they're active, like the muscles on your legs are active and your knees aren't just resting on the floor. Press into the tops of the feet to help you do that, and almost even pull your toe knuckles towards you. Center of each leg is down, and just with this action, you're starting to engage legs, probably tone the belly a little bit. Find where your two front hip points are, the landmarks we used at the beginning of the class. There is movement in the pelvis. So draw your two front hip points towards each other until you sense a toning in your belly. Then keep that, press into your hands, but slide your hands forward a little bit to help lift your shoulders away from the floor. Roll them back, press down into the floor, and lift your head away from the floor. So we're engaging through the back of the body, we're engaging through the core, we're engaging through the legs. 2 breaths here. It's not about height, it's more about the length. And then exhale, come back down. That's 1. You can rest your forehead again. Okay, just for a little bit of a change, take your hands from the sides and bring them underneath your ASIS, those hip points at the front. So each one of those points rests in the center of one of your palms. Line up your legs and engage them the same way. Now lift up your head so it's in line with your spine. Roll your shoulders back. Keep that and lift your right leg off the floor. And notice how your right hip point drops into your hand. Bring it back down and do the same on the left side. So as we're lifting, it's not just a lifting, it's a lifting and a lengthening. Think of every action we do is probably going to be multi-directional. There's always going to be a reaching out or drawing in. So I'm lifting up and reaching out here. Bring it back down. So now let's try the right side again. This time, don't let your hip point really drop into your hand. So there's that sense of toning through the belly by bringing the front hip points towards each other. It's possible. Left leg lifts up and reaches back, and bring it down. So we're engaging through the backs of the legs. Do the left side again. Calf, hamstrings, gluteus muscles, back extensor muscles. Come back down. Okay, now plant your hands again. Rest for a moment. Then activate your legs. Hands on the floor, you can slide them towards you to help roll your shoulders away from the floor. Lift your head in line with your spine. Press into the floor with your hands to keep the front of the chest lifted. Reach back and up with both legs without letting your front hip point drop heavy. So keeping your belly toned. So we activate the muscles, warming the muscles up from the calves through the backs of the legs, the hamstrings, feel that in your body, gluteus muscles, low back. Not one part is working more than any other part. And if your low back is, check to see what's happening with your hip points. And then lower back down. Okay, you can bring your hands forward. We've got one more of that. Like, this is a forward bend class, I thought you said. Here we are doing back bends. But we need to warm up the back of the body. We need to warm up all the muscles that we're going to ask to lengthen. Okay. This time, hands back, arms back, palms facing towards the center, facing towards your legs. Activate your legs. Get a toning in the low belly with from the hip points moving towards each other. Lengthen, so it's a bit of a shrug of your shoulders at first, and then roll your shoulders away from the floor. Now reach your arms up and back so your thumbs come off the floor. Lift your head off so it's in line with your spine. Your upper body is going to reach forward and up. Your legs are reaching back and up. So at the same time, it doesn't have to be a big movement. To feel the whole back of the body. Kind of play with it. Are you lifting more with your legs or more with your upper body? Can you balance it? Can you feel a sense of lengthening through the front of the body from the pubic bones to the collarbones and wide through the collarbones? One more breath. These belly down back bends get your heart rate going too. That's a bonus. And then exhale. Bring your hands beside your chest. Just lay on your belly for a moment. Feeling the energy, the tingling energy in the back of the body. Feeling your heartbeat. Okay, bring your hands beside your chest. Roll your shoulders back. Activate your legs, tuck your toes under, push up. Stretch back, now downward dog. So set up your hands. I go as wide as my shoulders. I think I go even a little bit wider. I want to have an evenness from the wrist, from my hand, like my fingers are the rays of the sun coming right up. So I don't want to turn my hand in or out. If you are needing a chair, you can do a chair downward dog here, especially if your body is not able to go into that kind of hip flexion. Press down and forward with your hands using the fingers and action of the hands like suction cups. Press down to lift your knees up and pull them backwards so you start to tone your belly. Keep the belly toned, start to pivot around your hips. So we go into hip flexion, spine is neutral. Can you get a sense that your spine is neutral? And then come back down again. So we started here. Check in that you've got a neutral alignment. Do the same things we just did. Press down and forward with your hands, knees lift up and pull them back. Then pivot around your hips. If you pivot around your hips, your body and your thighs come closer. And then come back down. So we're keeping the knees flexed. That means knees bent. Do a couple more times on your own. Push down and forward with your hands. Lift up and pull your knees back. Then move around. You're moving around the shoulder joint. You're also moving around the hip joint. And notice this last one, can you keep the space along the front of the body as you do it? I'm going to watch Dean and keep an eye on him, make sure he does it. Pull your knees back. Oh, it's good. I wish you guys could see what he's doing. It's awesome. And then we'll stay for another breath or two. Bend one leg, then the other. Notice any kind of tension you might feel, resistance in your calves. This can also be done, I'm thinking specifically of you, Richard, on a chair here. And wider, so the pelvis needs to be able to tip. And so if it's not going to tip when you're on your hands on the floor, bringing a little bit more space between the floor and your hands is a really great idea. Okay. From downward dog, let's walk forward to the front of the mat. Bend your knees. Take your feet fairly wide. Bend your knees. Bring your hands to your thighs. Press down and start to push up until you can stand. Now get your chair, your blocks, whatever it is that you've got that you're going to work with. I'm going to use a chair because I'm not sure how many have blocks. It can also be a stool too. And it can also be the chair seat or this high side. We got to move away from this idea of props being making a pose easier or being, I don't know, something that's lesser. The whole idea is that we need to serve ourselves. We need to serve ourselves and the self, and in combination. So we're going to be a fair distance away. This is going to be a bit of a hybrid between a downward dog and a standing forward bend. Feet, take your feet almost as wide as your mat, with weight in your big toe base as well as your outer heels. So you have a sense that you've got arches in your balance from the inside edge to the outside of your feet. Start to bend your knees and check to see when you bend them that they line up over the center of your ankle and point towards the base of your second toe, because sometimes the top of the toe can turn in different directions. So forward, ankles are bending, knees are bending, hips are bending. We're just going to go down and then back up again. What's not bending is the spine. So I'm not rounding through my spine like this, and I'm not arching through my spine like this. So take your hands to the tops of the thighs, and let's do this a few times together. Slide down. As best you can, spine stays in this alignment. Start to work the backs of the legs, the sides of the legs, the fronts of the legs. Noticing the space between your pubic bone and the top of the breastbone and the collarbones stays the same. Do you have that awareness? That's what makes you a yoga practitioner, is tuning into those kinds of things. Okay, one more time. Pause here, reach forward to either your blocks or your chair, keeping your weight over your feet. So when I came down this way, I reached forward like this. I didn't shift forward like this. So I'm going to stay back here. Keep lengthening your sit bones away from you as you pull back. As you pull back through your sit bones, press into the chair or into the blocks and lift your chest up to lengthen it forward. Remember, multi-directional. We want to lift and lengthen forward at the same time. If this still feels too low, here's the chair on the other side. Knees are bent. Slowly moving into a sensation of tension, of resistance in the backs of the legs, the buttocks, and the low back. This stuff takes some time, so we can't rush it. Maybe even higher. So sit bones back and down, chest forward and up. Breath smooth and even. One more breath here. And then slowly bring yourself back to your legs. Push down and slowly lift back up again. Okay. Again, it can be chair, it can be blocks. We're going to do one leg at a time. Step your left foot forward. Here's the chair. I'll show the chair first. Left foot forward, right foot back. It's on its own side. It's about one of your leg lengths, and your back foot is pointing more forward than it is sideways. Push now into your left big toe base to get your left outer hip to pull back. Then start to lean forward, either to the chair, to the back of the chair, or to blocks. Notice the feeling of resistance you have in the back of the left leg, probably up high here. Notice it and feel it without moving too far into an intensity. So I probably can't say it enough. Going higher is going to be so much more beneficial than trying to do something lower. We want to move away from destination. You know, this idea of what we're living through right now, we don't know what's coming. If we keep focusing on a destination, getting through it, then we won't be able to see the incredible things that are possible to come out of this. So take a few more breaths here, pushing down through the big toe base of the left foot, pulling back with the outer hip. This is hip flexion on the left leg. with spinal extension. To come out, bend your front knee, push away from your blocks or your chair, and come back up, and we'll change to the other side. We bow to what we have right here, right now, because really it's the only thing we have. So both feet, it's as if I took my left foot, I slid it straight back, it's still on its own side, and turned my heel inward. Push down into the right big toe base now. Pull back as if it was a band, as if I had a resistance band from here to here. And I'm trying to stretch it by pulling my hip back and pushing down into my toe. Keep doing that and start to hinge at the hip crease. Pelvis is tipping forward like we did at the beginning. Maybe your knee needs to bend, or maybe you need to be a little bit higher. Let's see, Dean's on the chair. Push down and pull back. Notice the sensation you're feeling through your buttocks, the back of the leg, the lower leg. Actually shortening a little bit in the lower leg because it's more like a pointed foot, the relationship of the foot to the leg. Use the same actions that we were doing at the beginning. Tailbone back and down slightly, chest down and forward. You want to sink between the shoulder blades. Yeah, we're holding it a little bit longer. We're seeing, is one side different than the other? Can I tell? Am I struggling on one side? This is still the first phase of a forward bend. We're still just working with this idea. We've got to get the pelvis to tip forward. So we're holding it a little bit longer with, without the intensity, to ask the fascia to start to slide more. Okay, then to come out, I'm going to suggest you bend your front knee, push down into your front foot, pushing it down and forward, and lift back up. Step forward. Okay, so now slight difference. Again, you can use a block, or if you're using a chair, you're going to put it on the left. Left foot here, right foot back. Instead of it being this, now you're going to be turning it more to the side, the back foot, and your heel and your heel or the back of your arch are going to line up. If you're not using a chair, you're going to have a block here beside your left foot or ankle. So triangle pose. We can explore so many things in triangle pose, but the thing I'd like you to focus on today is keeping your knee facing forward, not kind of forward, but forward. So if you look down at the way your leg is right now, you might have your foot forward, but your knee turned in a little bit. Take your hands to your front hip points and turn your pelvis to turn your knee. Okay, once you get your knee forward, again, it lines up when it bends over the center of the ankle and points towards the base of the second toe. So we want to maintain that. We want to keep that. So start to slide. We're going to go bending the front knee first. Slide down, kind of like we did in the forward bend. Check that you're still in alignment with that. And then what do you need to reach to? Is it a chair? Is it the block? Is it the floor? You know, where are you able to maintain that alignment and be connected to something? Then, next part is we start to move the front leg towards straight. It's the same idea as the last pose. Press into the base of the left big toe and pull the outer left hip back. Again, it's not destination. I'm not saying you have to straighten your leg. We're moving in that direction. So when you feel resistance, pay attention to that. No matter whether you straighten your leg or not, keep your pelvis doing what it's doing. Have a little bit more of a focus now on your back leg. Turn your whole right thigh. It's not a big movement, but roll it outward towards the right. So both legs are rolling away from each other. Right hand is still on your hip point. Long spine. Check in that you have a nice long spine. And then turn your body. This is not a new lesson, we did this last week. Turn your body so you're moving your left chest away from your left arm. Open up that space. You haven't affected your leg. You're only going to turn so far that you can still maintain the action of the legs. Push down and forward with your front foot, down and back with your back foot. So the front leg is doing this external rotation. Back leg is doing an external. They're rolling away from each other. One more breath here. Slow, easy, well, easy. Slow, easeful release. Okay, then bend your front knee. Slowly push your feet away from each other and lift up. And we'll change and go to the other side. As you get set up for the other side, just take a moment to just stand in Tadasana and feel what's happening in the body. It's 10:14. We will get to a full-fledged forward bend. I mean, they're all forward bends in their own way, but maybe not Janushirshasana today, Chris. But at least you'll be able to leave the practice and then go into it. Okay, so right foot. See, I'm time challenged. I need an hour and a half or 2 hours. More back foot, more pointed to the side. Pay attention too as you set up your feet, heel to heel or heel to the back of the arch. You're allowed to have a little wiggle room because you want to really serve and protect your knees. So now bend your front knee and check to see. When you bend it, does it go more pointing towards the center of the mat? Mine does for sure. So now I'm going to just put my hands on my hips, on the front hip points, and turn my pelvis forward until I can also turn my leg to face forward. You know, there are parts, the more advanced you get in the practice, you'll do a little bit more of opening, but for now, we're really going to focus on keeping this alignment. So then start to press down and forward with your front leg, push into the base of the big toe, pull back through your outer right hip, and bow forward. Come to your chair, your block, your leg even, wherever you need it to be. Towards straight, doesn't have to be straight. Where you are feeling the resistance through the backs of the leg. Just kind of approaching the hamstrings and the other muscles that act like hamstrings in a different way, just not leaning forward. So we're rolling both legs away from each other. That's this kind of an action, this way. So we're now, instead of narrowing through the front of the hip points, we're widening them. Christine, probably would feel good on your SI joints to do this action. If it doesn't, stop, back off. You know, it's not always an all or nothing. Keep this alignment. So spine is long. Check that you have the alignment of the spine long. I'm leaning more forward on an angle. And then move your right chest away from your right arm. So we turn the body from there. Check that you still have that alignment. Probably becomes a little bit different sensation in the leg. Come back to the action of the legs rolling away from each other. You look at the alignment of my body. It's long. I'm not rounding. I'm not turning forward. I'm lengthening and then rotating through my rib cage. Again, you might need to be higher. There's a way to do this for everybody. Couple more breaths here. Then roll back towards the floor, bend your front knee, push both feet down and away from each other to come up. Turn your feet in, walk your heels and toes back towards the center. Stand in Tadasana for a moment and notice what you're feeling in the front of the body, feeling in the back of the body. You know, it's times like this that I offer reverence to the universe. Not that it has a master plan, I don't necessarily believe that, but I do believe it is there and it wants to support, or is supporting, not wants to, it is supporting every one of us as individuals. And that's a pretty amazing thing considering how many people there are on this planet. Not just people, but all beings, trees and everything. So that's what I am bowing to, the intelligence of that. Okay, so now take either your chair or your blocks in front of you to the side of the mat. We're going to do Prasarita Padottanasana, standing wide-legged forward fold. So we get into a forward fold. Finally, yay! Step your feet about a leg distance away from each other. So look at your leg distance from your hip. If you were to lay your leg down, it's a weird kind of idea, I know. But it's going to be different for everybody. I can't just say 2.5 feet because they're 3 feet, because you might have longer legs. We also want to take into consideration, do you have pain when you stand like this? So go where you are okay. The nice thing about it, and watch where my head is in comparison to the wall. When I go here, I'm closer to the ground. When I'm here, I'm taller. So we're already taking a step to go lower to the ground. It might be within reach. Turn your feet so that same rule applies. Bend your knees, they go point forward in the same direction. If you line up a dot between your center of your ankle and the base of your second toe and drew a line, and then drew a line where your knee was tracking, it's going to be a parallel line to that just inside your foot, if that makes any sense. So no pain or pressure on either side of the knee joint, because we might need to bend the knees here. Press into your big toe base. That's the ball of the foot. That's this part right here that I've been focusing on. But also put weight into your outer heels, feeling a pulling away. Inner thighs move away from each other, and buttocks muscles, these gluteus muscles engage. Let's all stay weighted in the feet, but bend the knees. Spine stays neutral. And then push back up. We'll go slow. Bend. I'm going to add the forward in a second. So we're keeping the legs neutral, or sorry, the spine neutral as we bend and straighten. Noticing if the body wants to do something different. Keep pressing, keeping your weight into your outer heels. And now, hands to your thighs from the top, slide down. Start to allow the body to tip forward. We're still in neutral spine. And slide back up. 2 more times like that. Slide down. No pain in the knees. Adjust your feet if you need to. Okay, stay here. I think that was 2 more times. Reach forward to your block or your chair or the back of the chair. This part's really important because we can go too far too soon. So with your hands on the blocks or the chair or the back of the chair, keep the spine long. Keep your hips, let me back up. Keep a sense in your feet that you are balanced evenly on both feet. I'm going to go sideways so you can get a better sense of what I'm doing. Okay, so here we can start to play with lifting up through the backs of the legs without disturbing what's going on in the spine. Try bending a few times and lengthening a few times. Like for me, my challenge is I'm very flexible in my low back, so I tend to sink a little bit more in my low back here like this. So I need to be aware of keeping some tone in my low belly. Okay, last one. You don't have to have straight legs. We're going to stay long through the front of the spine and see if there's room to bow forward more without losing the length from the pubic bones up to the collarbones, without losing the width through the top of the chest, while keeping the head in line with the spine. Do you have that sense of awareness? Can you tell when, for example, the weak part or the part of least passive, least resistance is your upper back rounding? If you ever want to shift, make changes, it's got to be with lots of awareness. Now, so maybe those of you who are a little bit more long through the hamstrings, you might come down all the way to hands to the floor. But I'd like you to see what's going on in the back of my body. My legs are moving towards straight. My spine is still long. The front of my body, from here, my pubic bones up to my collarbones is long. For those of you who might be where I am, then start to drop your tailbone towards the floor a little bit so that you start to tone a little bit more in your abdomen. Lots of awareness still in the base of the big toes and outer heels. Wherever you happen to be. Length. Okay, slowly start to come back up. You can bend your legs, bring your hands to your thighs, press down, and come up. Okay, so we're going to do one more version of that. Let's step in just to release. Standing forward bend, it's interesting to me. We do it so quickly in so many yoga classes, but it requires so much knowledge, so much awareness of what's going on in the body. We don't want to sacrifice ourselves for what we feel so grateful for. We want to be open to receive at the same time that we're offering. Okay, so let's go wide again. Set your feet up the same way. And Chris O'Neill, if you'd like to go into Janu Shirshasana, if you feel warmed up to go into that, you can go there if you like, or anybody else. Same idea. We're going to bend at the knees, come into the tipping the pelvis first. Stay centered in both feet. Reach towards the chair, your block. Move your left block to the center, or move the chair right to the, or you put your hand in the center of the chair. I'm still centered over my feet. I haven't shifted forward to lean forward. I'm here. So now keep this, press down, lift up, turn your whole body so your left chest moves away from your left arm. It's tempting to throw your head first, and it's tempting to shift your hips over to the right. Hips are going to stay level. In fact, you can even put your left or your right hand on the back of the pelvis and turn this way. Turn so slowly, so much awareness that you're not going to miss out on the subtleties that you kind of go, oh, that's where I am. So we do this rotation with a neutral spine, with flexed hips and a neutral spine. Then we come back into the center, both hands on both blocks or on the chair. Then we go into, now we'll go into deeper hip flexion perhaps, but also, this might be me if I'm bending my legs and using the chair. This might be you. A lengthening and rounding and rolling through the spine. So now I can go here. So I've got tailbone dropping down. I've got my whole spine rounding and lengthening at the same time. I'm not compromising through the front of the body. I'm not overemphasizing my upper back. Still maintaining an awareness that I'm lengthening through the front of the spine. Or you're here, or somewhere in between. Slowly make your way back up. We have a second side to rotate on. Block or chair. Hands to your hip points. Bend at your knees, weight in your big toe base and outer heel, bend forward. Right hand to the center. Left hand can rest on the sacrum, which is the back of the pelvis. Lengthen. Press down. Turn your chest, your right chest, away from your right arm without shifting your hips to the sides. Might not get very far. The longer your spine is, the more it sits in an axial extension, the more ability you'll have to rotate through the thoracic spine, through where the rib cage is. So there's no point in really going too far down, because you just will miss out on the incredible offering of rotating. Slowly come back. One more time going into forward flexion, but this time I invite you to step your feet closer together. And we'll do Uttanasana. Ardha Uttanasana, again, your weight is in your feet. You've not shifted forward, especially the chair can kind of be a little bit deceiving. We want to be where you are, resting in your feet. Big toe base, outer heels are connected to the earth. Hinge at your hips, bending your knees as much as you need to. Go to where you can maintain length in the spine first. Then start to bow forward. It might be bent knees. This is so hard to teach without people in front of me. So this might be your version. You can see I'm kind of doing more of a child's pose like action in my body. Maybe the blocks. It's an all levels class, so there's possibility that you might be more here. Weight is in there, your feet, centered in your feet. You've got a sense of toning through your belly, but not too much that shortens to the front of the body. A sense of evenness. Not all muscles are going to be working or lengthening the same rate in the back of the body, but a sense of evenness through the back of the body. And let's do one more breath here. And then climb your way back up, supporting your back, coming back through extension first, then straightening your legs. Okay, in Tadasana, set your feet up about hip distance apart, closer if you feel you're stable, wider if you need more stability that way. Turn your knees forward, so adjust your feet to where your knees need to be. Close your eyes for a moment if you're okay with that, and sense the alignment of your body from within. You know, we worked on hips, we worked on legs, we worked on low back. We affected a lot of parts of the body today. So how does the breath feel? How do you feel emotionally? Do you feel you have something to be grateful for? Okay, let's come back down onto the floor. We're going to do one more thing before Shavasana. I'm going to say if you want to have your chair for your legs up like you did at the beginning, by all means, go for that. When we come down, I'll ask you to either have a rolled up blanket. This is a blanket that's been folded, or you can use a block under your pelvis. I'm going to start by laying down and sliding this under the back of my pelvis. If you need a little bit more time, don't worry, take the time you need. You're in your house, you can go longer than the class. So my pelvis is elevated. I want to just have this little bit of a lift first before I go into any other pose. Slide your legs out if it's an option that does not cause you back pain or feeling of compression. When you slide your legs out, they don't just flop away from each other. They're the same active legs that you had in the back bends. Reaching out through the base of the big toe, balancing in the back of the heel. Bring your back rib cage down towards the floor without feeling compression through the spine. Take your hands to your front hip points, to the pubic bones, and balance that out. I'm not going to just let my knees drop to the floor. I want to stay active through my legs. So there's a little bit of a sense of lifting, an action of lifting my knees away from the floor. You can also take your arms and reach them up overhead, reach them away from you, so you reach your fingertips out in one direction and your toe tips out in the other direction. We've done a lot of hinging at the hips, so this just kind of helps to open us back up again. And then we'll finish with the legs up on the chair. If you don't feel like you want to do that, that's okay too, but it's nice to then drop the thigh bones back into the hips. Stay here for another few breaths if you're feeling good. But you can also keep the elevation of your hips. I'm going to bring my chair in. You could also roll to your side. You can take this blanket out if you want. Again, level through the pelvis, the bowl of the pelvis. Roll your shoulders out, your arms go out to the sides. Feel the length from the pubic bones to the top of the sternum and the width through your collarbones. I kind of like to start with my pelvis elevated, and then after about 30 seconds or a minute or longer, I'd like to slide it out, whatever's underneath me, then slowly descend. So my hips are still elevated, but I like to slowly do this to try to land in the center of my pelvis. Gives me this sense of really creating length in the low back. Landing my pelvis first. Then adjusting however you need to. You can come right off the chair as well. And if you were going to realign and do one thing to be more comfortable, what would it be? And take some time to unhinge your jaw. Let your eyes fall back away from your closed eyelids. And take a moment to reflect on what do you have deep respect and awe for? Can you do an inner bow to that while feeling how your outer body stays open to receive? Hear the sound of my voice. And let it just bring you a little bit closer to the experience you're having in the room you're in, sensing and feeling the space, your props, your clothes, your breathing, anyone else in the room with you. And if you'd like to stay longer here for Shavasana, please stay. There's no reason you can't. It's a gift. I'm a little bit in awe of the power of Shavasana because it's so healing. Shavasana and restorative poses. If you are ready to move, move however your body wants to move, whether it's fingers or toes or rolling of your head or a yawn. And stretches, wiggles, and then make your way over to your side and come up to sit. But if you want to stay there, and just bring an awareness to your heart space, the center of your chest behind your breastbone. Whether you want to just do this with your awareness or bring your hands here. And if you're sitting, if you've made your way to sit either on the floor, on a prop, or on a chair, bring your palms together. Bring your palms towards you so the thumbs can rest on your breastbone right near your heart center. And use your breath here. Take a breath in and lift your thumbs using the breath. The chest rises up. We create space in the front of the body. That's what we do before we bow. It's something we do at the end of every yoga practice. Can we do it at the end of every day, at the end of every moment? Somehow find this sense of gratitude, bowing to something greater than ourselves, but also within each one of us. So I bow to you with great respect for you getting up this morning and doing this with me. Namaste. Great respect for everything that each one of you do as individuals to serve the greater good. Thanks for coming.